Is it just me, or does that intro song actually mirror quite well the opening to this Ewok show? We are the Ewoks, we're the spirits of the forest moon. That one. Anyway, I'm sure you're all wondering why I'm playing this game again. Well, I never actually beat it. Thanks to a comment by user Mars2000 of Generation MSX, I learned that this game actually has an ending. I also found information on these games on msx.org and a blog that is currently scrolling on the side of the screen. These games were only released in Spain, which explains why they are mostly in Spanish. Not to toot my own horn or anything, but I took 3.5 years of Spanish classes in high school, so I understand some of the words that are on this page. Thankfully, the information on msx.org was in English. So, the first time I played this game, none of this music was playing at all, and as it turns out, I had just found a bad copy of the ROM for this game, and thanks to that MSX forum, I found a good working copy. There were 3 other games made by this Walther Miller that I'm going to play in this video too. Thanks again to the blog in Spanish for the picture of this advertisement. Here's the rainbow bridge that's supposed to appear. You have to line yourself up at the exact pixel to get this bridge to appear, as well as on every transition between each level in this game. There's an exact point where you have to stand in order to unlock the secret doorway to the next area. Once I learned that, I felt like I had to come back and finally beat this game. And with enough playtime, I eventually figured out that when you start the game on the same beat of the intro song, all of the enemy patterns stay 100% consistent. It's just groups of enemies that fly from the left to the right side of the screen, as well as sometimes bats and skulls that come down from the top. It's actually not that bad to memorize where you need to go throughout the entire game. There is some debate as to whether Walther Miller was actually officially licensed by Lucasfilm to make these games. According to the commenters on Memories of 8 Bits, that Spanish blog from earlier, Walther Miller were a bunch of crooks. On that blog page, they had a screenshot of an advertisement, I assume from some magazine back in the day. Walther Miller had 2 series of games. The blue series included 2 puzzle games that we'll get to in a minute, I promise. And the red series, which had this game, Ewoks and the Dandelion Warriors, as well as Droids, the White Witch. We'll get to that later. The screenshots for the red series games on the magazine do not have those screens actually in either game, so that's pretty scammy, all things considered. And here's the second of a hidden pathway you have to discover by lining yourself up. This one's pretty easy, you just have to line yourself up on the side of those bushes to get that small pattern of bricks to appear in the wall. The rainbow bridge was also just lining yourself up against some bushes. The next one is also on the right side of the screen. You have to line up against a block to get a bridge over a piece of water. And then the final one is at the very end that I think it just kind of disappears on its own. I've actually not quite understood the mechanics behind it. And this little wisty sprite looking thing that flies from left to right and shoots like a ghost downwards, that thing can't hurt you. The ghost it shoots can, but it's a great indicator of, like, hey, you can stand at this vertical spot of the screen and you'll be fine, as long as you're all the way to the right, where the enemies basically never hit you. I call it a wisty because in the Ewoks cartoon, they call a species of, like, firefly fairies wisties, or maybe that was the name of a specific one. I can't remember. It's been a long time since I've seen that cartoon, and I only watched the first few episodes because the best way I can describe it is they looked at Care Bears and they thought, hey, we could do that with Ewoks, and then they did that for 2 seasons. I'm a grown adult. I can't stomach watching Care Bears any more than I can stomach watching the Ewoks show. From what I've seen, it's not a bad kid's show. The Droids cartoon, I've seen every episode of that, and I really enjoyed that series, even though it's definitively not in the canon anymore, because, well, the Droids cartoon is about C-3PO and R2-D2 before A New Hope, and, well, when George made Revenge of the Sith, he kind of forgot that there was a cartoon about that, and so he basically transitions the droids straight from you are in the service of Padme Amidala to you are now in the service of Captain Antilles. The Droids cartoon just doesn't fit in that timeline anymore. But it's still an enjoyable watch, especially for the animation. The Ewoks cartoon doesn't have anything to do with either of the Ewoks movies they made or the rest of the Star Wars universe at large. It's just its own thing, but that's okay. Anyway, as you can see, the Wisty is like changing its vertical position every once in a while during these like triangle shaped bricks that are going on. This part is one of the hardest in the entire game for me. So I tried to use that as like my guide of here's where you need to go next. And then we're finally at the end of the game at the beach section, which is also very difficult to get through in places. But once you get past the beach, the rest of the game is basically free. There is no need to worry past that point. And just in case you can't tell, yes, I am recording this voiceover after I played the game. When I beat this, I was dead silent, I was locked in. There was no way I was ever going to be able to record commentary while trying to also beat this. The other 3 games, I could have given live commentary, but it was just easier for me to do a voiceover and skip over them. You'll see when we get there. That floaty right there, if you don't pick that up, you get to the end of this section and then just drown, and you keep drowning until all of your lives are gone and you game over. There was one playthrough I did where that floaty did not spawn, and I'd gotten all the way up here, and I was very upset. These games, technically, they say copyright Lucasfilm on them, which is not usually how pirated or fan games will do it, so I'm a little skeptical of these games and their authenticity. But to me, they are a fascinating piece of weird Star Wars-related history. That game, based on the Star Wars Droids cartoon, got published worldwide for a few different computers, and that game is basically on the same level as this one, in my opinion, in terms of quality. So this section is like the final boss area. I don't know what the weird bone things are, or why there's a fish jumping out of the water, but the fish can hurt you. You can hit the fish to destroy it and get points. I don't think the bones do anything. The rocks that appear will also kill you and take off a life. But the easiest way to get through this part is to just stay in the top right, as you can see. You gotta be careful, though, because when the final boss spawns, it will hit you if you're not, like, on top of things, ready to move down and out of the way. I'm still not quite sure whether the emulator I'm using is actually running at the correct speed that a real machine would. When the boss spawns, it is the most laggiest part of the game, because the arrows or spears that you throw end up looking like an old game of Galaxian, where it's like you can throw one attack at a time and you just have to keep dodging. I have no idea what that boss creature is supposed to be, but again, it's almost 100% consistent with its attack patterns, to where if you just figure out how to dodge it like I am, this game is really not that bad to beat. Sure, it takes a long time to learn, but it's very consistent. The game's music is very repetitive, which is why it's turned down so low in the video. I'm pretty sure the main menu is trying to be like the intro to the Ewoks show. It's an okay sounding main tune, not gonna lie. I love hearing these underpowered, old school chiptune sounds, just to hear what they could come up with back then. But again, I don't want to give these guys too much credit because they may or may not have actually officially licensed this from Lucasfilm. And the one piece of evidence I have that really does make me question whether Lucasfilm had any involvement in this is at the very end of the game, it plays the Indiana Jones theme as victory music. One of the things I noticed while playing is that throwing spears slows the game down, and having a lot of enemies on screen really makes the game chug. So, whenever possible throughout my route that I developed, I would stop throwing spears just to get the game to move on faster. Anyway, I'm about to destroy whatever this thing is, so have a listen. The next game I'm going to show off is Wicket el Ewok, which is a puzzle game. As you can see, the game displays a static image of Wicket the Ewok, and then it cuts the image into a grid of squares, and randomly assigns each square a number from 1 to 36. By typing the number, you can pick which tile, and by using the spacebar, you can place the tile on the map. And if you're right, then the tile gets placed, and if you're wrong, then nothing happens. Try again. There is no punishment to trying to put a piece in the wrong spot. The game started me off with a 5-minute timer, and we're gonna skip till the end so you can see what happens. I didn't win my first attempt. As soon as the timer runs out, the game transitions to a loss screen. The game is a little generous in that if you have a piece typed out and ready to place, it won't let you lose on time until you try placing that piece. The final screen says, "I'm sorry, you didn't make it. Try again." And so that's what I did. And when I retry the game, it adds an extra minute of time to the timer. So that's a nice bit of dynamic difficulty adjustment. Let's just speed up the footage and get through this as quickly as possible, because as you can see, it's not really a complicated concept. It's just put a picture puzzle together. The artwork is decent enough for a computer of the time. I don't think this game needed to be any more complex than it is, but it doesn't really have any replayability because it only has the one picture. And the only thing the game will do differently is give you more or less time. As soon as I place the final piece, the game transitions to the victory screen. This one says, "You did it! I challenge you to another puzzle." Unfortunately, the game only has the one puzzle, so instead of playing this one again, let's transition to our third game of the video, Droids and el Planeta Ingo. This is the exact same game as the Ewok puzzle, but with R2 and C-3PO, who appear to be on the surface of a planet. There's really nothing different about this other than the picture. This one I managed to actually beat in the 5 minutes, just in the nick of time. One thing I should mention is the little graphics by all the numbers. I'm not sure why there's corruption in the place where I'm typing numbers, and when the numbers get crossed out, they just kind of get messed up. I'm not sure if that's a fault of the ROM that I've downloaded for these two puzzles. There might be some sort of corruption in the process they used to archive it, or it could be that the copies of the game they archived from were just faulty. Like in Ewoks and the Dandelion Warriors, the first time I played that game, I had a bad ROM that didn't play the music. So, I'm sure there's a fixed version of this out there, but these two puzzle games are not complex enough to where I really care about running them properly. The point is that I beat them. I did the puzzle, and I'm gonna move on. I finished with 1 second left, so there's no way I could have done this puzzle any faster. Well, maybe. If I really tried hard at it, I guess. But I'm not going to do that, because it's just a picture puzzle, and I've done it. So let's just move on to the final game of this video, Droids, the White Witch. Just like how the two puzzle games basically share the same game engine, this game is practically the same gameplay-wise as Ewoks and the Dandelion Warriors, except for one big difference, and that is that this game goes on infinitely. There is no end screen besides a game over, as far as I can tell. All the enemies are reskins of enemies that are in the other game, but if this one was developed first, then it would be more proper to say that the enemies in Ewoks are reskins of the enemies from Droids, and unfortunately, I have no way of knowing which game was actually developed first. It's probably more likely that they developed both games at the same time. The White Witch is a lot easier than Ewoks and the Dandelion Warriors because they do not throw that many enemies at you on screen at one time. All the background environments keep repeating, seemingly at random. I'm sure there's some pattern to it, if you were to study it hard enough. What's really interesting to me is that the White Witch in the Droids cartoon was a land speeder built by Thal Jobin and that other guy, I can never remember his name. They had a spaceship to travel through space, but the land speeder would, like, sit on top of it. So I have no idea why they made this game flying through space, shooting at enemies, but then call it the White Witch, which is not the name of the spaceship. I don't know. I don't think there's any reason to worry too much about this bootleg. You might notice the Nivelle counter in the bottom right of the HUD. In Ewoks, that ticks up every time you pass through a level, and once the game ends, you know, the game just ends. But in Droids, that number just keeps going up, and, well, because this game is so easy, and I wanted to be sure that there was absolutely nothing at the end of this one, well, I kept playing for a very long time, and I got the counter all the way to 99 before it rolled back to 0. So there you have it. That's all of the Walther Miller, possibly most likely bootleg Star Wars games from 1987. The next main BESWGE video will cover an exciting peripheral from the makers of Star Wars Monopoly. And for the next BESWGE Gaiden video, I think I'm going to go back and play some ports of some older games. But anyway, let me know if you've ever played these games and what you think of them, because if you've played them, I want to know why you would do that to yourself. As for putting these games on the main ranking tier list, I think I'm just going to group them all under one Walther Miller games category, and I have to put them in Y tier, because I just would have to question why anyone would want to play them, but also, they're not, like, the worst things I've ever played, so they're not bad games. Well, not from a certain point of view, anyway. They are technically playable, kind of.